How many books do you think there are about George Washington?
500,000.
$2,716.
What?
2,700.
I like it.
There has never been a comprehensive bibliography done of works by any president. So our thought was, who better to start with than our first president, George Washington? Our goal is to collect all books about George Washington that are related to him or that he is a significant part of.
It was surprising and then frustrating when I realized that there was no ready bibliography available to be able to find books on certain topics or certain periods of Washington's life, and it required just basically fishing around. And certainly I'm an expert and I have the privilege of working on Washington every day. I can go through all these hoops and take all these steps. So what about the person who's just kind of interested in whether there's any books been written on Washington and his western lands or Washington's early Revolutionary War generalship? Because they're sunk.
Usually when I explain the bibliography project, the first question I get is, how in the world are you going to cover all of these books? And it's certainly a lofty goal, but it's one that we have been focusing on and we believe we can achieve. And so in our annotations, we're trying to cover the most important aspects of each book. And that may be the author, it may be the topics covered, it may be what was going on in the United States at that time.
So to write the shorter annotations, you just have to look at the introduction, the conclusion, the table of contents or other key sections just to get a sense of what the book is about, how it relates to Washington, and the quality of the book.
You also helped me a lot by doing research for the longer annotations, which we do for books that have had a large impact on Washington studies.
This book is called George Washington's Smallest Army, and it is about how an owl, a mouse, and a frog actually helped George Washington to win the Revolution. So it is a juvenile book, but it also talks about George Washington as a leader, George Washington in the Revolution, and a little bit about the Continental Army. So kids learn about the history of George Washington, the history of the Revolution, but they also have some fun with how little animals helped George Washington to fight along the way.
We were able to convince Mount Vernon that this was something that would be useful to them. So through a joint effort on the basic idea of the bibliography to put something very substantial and thousands of titles online with annotations and authoritative entries, it got underway.
This is a recent book that looks at George Washington and religion. So if scholars or readers would like to look at previous books written about George Washington and religion in the 19th century, this would be a book that they could go to for the much more recent work on George Washington and religion, which is the beauty of the bibliography. You can look at how topics have changed throughout time.
I think it's just interesting, like reading the articles about, like the scholarly reviews of the books to, like people are just kind of arguing over how good the book is or whether it does a good job or a terrible job of representing Washington.
The wonderful thing about this bibliography is that it is meant for everyone. So students from any age, adults, teachers, academics.
In particular, it is going to far outpace any other dedicated bibliography of works on George Washington, in which there are only 4 or 5. The first published 400 titles in 1889, and then the last substantial one was published in 1932, which maybe only had 800 or 900 titles. And this is going to be pushing 10,000 titles.
This is what the number I thought about this morning, for real. 10,757.
I like to tell you about 1,364. 22, 5, 3, 6, 4. Incrementing.
I will say
You have to say something.
7,434.
Wrong.